Hey, everybody. Thanks for being back here with me, Coach Val. So, listen, after 30 years as a health coach, exercise scientist, medical fitness, all the things that I've done in these past 30 years, one of the things that always goes through my mind is I ask myself, what is the key information that people know before they become really successful? And what is the key information that most people never get their hands on and therefore don't end up being terribly successful in health, in fitness, and anything in terms of healthier living? And I think one of the things that no one's really talking about that is worthy of conversation is understanding the difference between what I'm going to call three different points of fat on a person's body. Now, I'm not talking about anatomical points, like where the fat is stored. I don't mean that. But I want to talk about and break down these three particular levels that I think are really important to know, but that nobody's really talking about. All right, so check this out. So we all know about adipose, excess unhealthy body fat that is statistically probably hurting your health. Okay, so this is obviously the case when you see someone who's very obviously obese, or if someone's body fat percentage is higher than the optimal. Now we're getting into adipose, excess body fat. Although I could make an argument that in the case of body composition, that's sometimes more about being under muscled than over fat. But regardless, I think you get the point. It means you have fat on your body that is harming your body, that's increasing your risk for cardiovascular disease. And it's usually also going to weigh down on the joints in such a way that potentially you're asking for arthritis as well by keeping that excess fat on you. Okay, so that's adipose or extra unhealthy fat, you could call it. Everyone knows about that, but now let's talk about the other two kinds of fat that I think is really helpful for you to know so you have the right mindset going forward in your health program. So, we also want to talk about what happens when that fat comes off, or if you never have it in the first place, and you just have healthy levels of fat, meaning levels that are not necessary entirely. You don't need all of it. You could lose 5 or 10 or whatever pounds and be very healthy and still stay within those same health metrics that you are currently. Your risk stratification and your health outcomes over the coming decades probably aren't going to change whether you lose a few pounds or potentially even gain a few pounds because you're at a nice, healthy body composition. Your fat levels are appropriate and there's wiggle room to go up and down a little bit. Okay, so that's just normal, healthy body fat, right? That's a quantifiable amount that is appropriate to your musculoskeletal system and to your long-term health. Now let's talk about another phase. There's a third component that doesn't really get brought up all that often, and that is essential fat. Now, essential fat is like for men of most ages, that's when you start getting under around 4%, maybe 5%. The data is kind of all over the place on this because no one really knows exactly and everyone's physiology is different. But basically, it's for men when you start getting really low like that. For women, it's usually under about 14% or so, but depends a lot on the age and a few other factors as well. So, what I'm saying is, there comes a point going back to adipose where you have fat that needs to come off or you're hurting your health. There's a point beneath that where you have less fat that's appropriate and it's good, it's giving your body what it needs, and you're within a spectrum. You can ebb and flow within that spectrum. And now there is this new one that I brought up here, which is essential fat, which just basically means this is if you go any lower than this essential fat, if you start dropping under that point, you're potentially asking for all kinds of different health problems, usually hormone related. A lot of times it's more risk for injury because you don't have the same kind of insulation you'd have with more fat. So a lot of problems can come from that. And I'm sure there's things that we haven't even fully studied and really understood yet that can happen from being under fat, from actually having too little fat on you, not having the essential fat necessary. So I think the important thing to take away here is obviously if you're overweight, you want to lose the weight. We know that, right? If you're at that healthy sweet spot though, like so many people are, where let's say if you're a guy and you're around 10, 12, 14, 15%, you're pretty lean, you're in good shape. You could lose a few more pounds of body fat in most cases, and that'd be perfectly fine. You'd still keep your essential fat. At the same time, if you have a bad couple of months and you gain some body fat, well, it's probably not statistically really going to hurt your health. You're probably still in that nice sweet spot. And for women, again, depending on age, women's bodies are more complicated. You're generally talking about that sweet spot being somewhere between around 22 and around 28%. But again, the studies are varied and it really does depend on the person. So anyway, guys, look, I hope this video has been helpful. I just think this is a good perspective to have because some people just think that that like they'll see someone like me and they will say, "Oh, you can't lose any fat at all. You'd be too skinny." And that's not true. I have a few extra pounds that I could certainly burn off, and they're not unhealthy adipose, but they wouldn't put me all the way down below essential fat. So I could get more lean. And a lot of people are like this. They're fit, they're strong, they're well, but they could cut down a few more pounds without necessarily hurting themselves or increasing any risk for health problems or hormone secretion issues or anything like that. And at the same time, they could gain a few and still likely be, although maybe not, as lean looking and as low in body composition, they can still be in a good, healthy perspective for the long run. So again, guys, I hope this video has been helpful. Now, listen, if you do want to find out more about weight management, click down below. I've got a 10-question quiz that if you take this quiz, it's going to be able to tell you, and I'll be able to get in touch with you if you'd like, to talk about your risk stratification and your methods of burning body fat effectively. So you can lose about 2 pounds per week like most people generally do healthfully. Also, there's some more great information down below. Please check it all out. And of course, if you have questions and you want to meet with me directly, you can do that over Zoom, regardless of where you are in the world. Just see down below in the description to get in touch with me and schedule that meeting. I look forward to your health and fitness success.